A few weeks ago, I put out a video where I caused a fire in the van. Basically, my propane stove malfunctioned and it wouldn't light with the sparker. Then I discovered this. So I was just doing some testing on the hose here with some soapy water. Those bubbles mean that there's a leak at this joint. The fix turned out to be a lot easier. I replaced this part here. This is the old one, and I guess that the threads in here were leaking. Replacing that part was absolutely necessary, but it wasn't the actual cause of the fire. The actual cause of the fire was that the sparks, the little sparks that are created electrically when you turn the knob on the propane range, weren't igniting the propane. So that's something that I need to take apart the stove and fix it. Like, I need to take it all the way apart, open it up, and fix the problem. So I've opened up the stove here, and it's pretty straightforward, actually. The propane line comes in here and then splits. It goes through each of these valves. And then this part here is the sparker. This one isn't even connected. So this line here, I believe, can't light at all. That one seems to have no problem lighting. And then this one will spark, but it won't actually light. So I really need to go through this and make sure that everything is working fine here. Okay, so I've rehooked up that wire, and now you can see that this will actually spark. I ran out of propane, so I can't really do much of a test right now, but this one here is the one that doesn't light at all, even though it sparks. And I'm thinking, maybe you can see this here, that there's that little teeny hole, let me see if I can get how close I can get, in this sort of plastic rubber thing. So if I spark this, look at where the spark goes. It kind of goes through that hole, and I think it's kind of supposed to go up here to where there's actual propane coming through. So for this to actually light, the propane kind of needs to get all the way down here, which is probably why it's so hard to light. So that one I'm probably going to always have to light with a barbecue lighter, unless I can find like a replacement for this part here. Okay, so I think now is about the time in the video where I own up to my mistakes. I think that owning when you are ignorant and you make a mistake is really important, especially when you're pushing this stuff out onto the internet. I don't want to come across as any sort of expert. I'm learning everything as I go along with this project. That's part of the fun, and it also comes with some risks. So I found out what was wrong with the propane stove, besides the leak, which has been fixed, and besides the broken piezo lighter. There was a problem that was user error, basically. This is a pressure regulator that has zero business being on a propane range. Having never seen a regulator like this before, I didn't know what it was. All I thought this did was turn on and off the gas like you would at the tap. I didn't realize that this was actually regulating the pressure to such a high degree. This goes 0 to 30 psi. That is why I turned my stovetop into a flamethrower. This, when I went down to the gas fitters, it has something to do with welding and torches. So zero business, and I can't stress this enough, being on a barbecue, which is essentially what that propane stovetop is. So I'd never seen this before. I didn't know what it was. I just assumed it was a regular regulator, and ultimately that falls on me because I'm playing with fire. Did I have any reason to know what this was? No, but ultimately, you know what? It doesn't matter. But so I'm going to step back here a little bit. The stove lit on fire for a second time while I was doing some testing, and I freaked out and I was ready to throw the stove out. And then I was just sort of thinking, you know, this is a very, very simple device. And really, it's just some tubes, so what could possibly be wrong with it? And it just sort of occurred to me that it's got to be the pressure. There's no way that a propane tank, that amount of pressure, that a stovetop should be acting like a flamethrower. So this was sort of my solution, and when I looked closer, I saw that there were little markings on the side here for PSI. So that's how I figured out that this was the wrong part. So this is not a part of my system anymore. I went down to the gas fitters and I had a long talk with them. I brought the entire system down to them, and we sort of walked through it, and she sort of, you know, she was shocked to see that part on it. Everyone in who was sort of in that store was just sort of looking at it like it didn't belong, you know? It's like having a handgun in the knife drawer. So I will show you what I bought. So I bought a bunch of stuff, but let's just focus on this here. This is a proper pressure regulator that you would see on a regular RV system. This is mounted, goes mounted on a wall or outside of a trailer, something like that, and it basically goes in one side, comes out the other. Pretty simple. So that is the part that is replacing the red part. That red part also did some very specific stepping down. So this hose will basically change, what is it? Is it 3/8 to 1/4 inch, I think? And then on top of that, I bought an extension hose. And the reason for that is, right now, this propane tank is living under the bed directly next to that battery there. It's worth noting that I haven't actually been using this to cook or anything like that. It's just that that is how long that hose runs to. That hose is right here, and you can see it only reaches there. So I bought a really long extension cord to basically bring it out that door there. I bought 10 feet, and I needed, what, 3, 5? The reason why I bought such a big cord is that it's kind of the only one they had available there, and it will be useful in the future when I make some changes to the propane system to have such a long hose. But for now, this is what I'm going to go with. So basically, I'm going to go through this wall with that extension, and the propane tank is going to live right here on the outside of this wall. So this is the corner where the propane will sit. It's on the outside of the wall, and I'll put it in a drain so that it can fall out if it ever leaks. But I really don't want this to be inside the main cab with me. So what I've done here is I've just hooked up this hose that goes to the regulator to try and see where I want to mount this. And then I need to drill a hole in the wall to bring the propane into the actual van to bring it up to the stove. Okay, so that hose is now coming through the wall. And it's just lying right out here. I'll show you that hole from the other side. It's just coming out here for the styrofoam. So I'm just assembling these outside pieces here, and I just want to point out that I am taping all of the pipe joints. These ones here that have the sort of flare, those don't get taped. Okay, so the regulator is mounted on the wall here, goes through that hole, and then down to the propane tank. And any moisture that gets into this regulator can fall out of that drain there. So this hose here that's coiled up is 3/8, and it's what's coming out of the wall from the regulator. And then it's going into a 1/4 inch hose that goes all the way back up to the propane stove itself. Okay, so I've just used some soapy water to check my joints. This one was bubbling up, but I retaped it and now it's just fine. So I'm going to go through, make sure that all of my joints are completely sealed and secure, and then I'll do a test with the actual range. I've bought this little vent here. It's got a screen on one side and just drainage here. And I'm going to put it in this corner, drill a hole down so that if this propane tank ever leaks, there's a way out. There's a reason why I'm putting it in this corner. It's protected. It won't ever get covered up because of the propane tank will be in the way. If the van is on this angle, there's nowhere for the propane to drain out, so it'll go in there. If it's on this angle, I think some of it will still go out there, but it can probably still get out through the door here, but this is the better way out, for sure. And I've now got a hole going through the wood and metal on the bottom here. This should now probably just be able to actually be pressed in place, but yeah, that might be a little bit hard to do, so I'll get that in place. Here's what that drain looks like from the underside of the vehicle. So I'm almost ready to go here, but I've decided just to disable the sparker. You can see these wires are these are what would normally do that. Basically, they connect into each of these ports here to create a sparker on the burners. The reason why I'm disabling it is just because one of the sparkers is broken, and I don't want to try and light the propane with the sparker and just let it build up, you know, and have any issues with that, like if I just forget. Okay, time to test if this is working. It might be a little hard to do with one hand. but I want to try and get this on camera anyway. Okay, so it turns out that that burner right there, the reason why there was flame coming out the edge, I just didn't have the top on and aligned properly, so I fixed that problem. So now when we light it, we should see that it's working fine. Yep, that's what I want to see. So I'm just going to bring that one down a little bit, and we're going to try lighting all three, make sure that this is working. Yep. Perfect. So I should be able to bring all of these down to just a simmer. Let's just check that the regulator is working properly. And it is. And we can just turn all those off now. Another important consideration in fire safety is, of course, a smoke alarm. And because I'm using both propane and a wood stove, this smoke alarm also detects carbon monoxide. It would probably be better to get two separate machines, but this one had both and basically costs the same as one. So this is what we're going to go with. The plan for this smoke alarm is to go up here at the foot of the bed by the bookshelf. There's a couple of reasons why I'm putting it here. It needs to be up at the top of the wall or on the ceiling. Ideally, this alarm says to put it on the ceiling, but because of the rolling door, if I want to put it over here, I can't, so it has to go on the wall. The reason why I'm not putting it over here is because it wants it as far away as possible from combustible components. The stove and the wood stove are right here. Plus, you want it to be as close to the bed as possible, so that leaves either on this side or over here. And I really don't want this alarm directly over my head when I'm sleeping, because this is where the head of the bed's going to be. That would be really, really painful. It's very, very loud. So it's still going to be painful here, but maybe that'll help just a little bit. So that's where I'm going to put it. Okay, so I've got the back plate mounted there, and then this should just slot in place. I've put batteries in this, so now it should be working once this goes in place. There we go. Okay, so we're going to give it a bit of a test here. And, oh man, this is going to really hurt my ears. So that test tells me that the smoke alarm and the carbon monoxide function are both working. Okay, so the propane system is now fully working, and I can breathe a lot easier knowing that I'm not breathing in any propane or starting any fires. So at the beginning of this episode, I had a flamethrower barbecue, and by the end of it, I got the propane outside of the living space, and I've got a perfectly working and, more importantly, safe stove. So I'm more than happy to own up to my own mistakes and show them to you guys, because this is a learning experience for me. I have to learn how to do everything, and I've basically done very little of the things that I'm doing to make this. This is all this building. It's a new learning experience, and so is working with propane. So what I learned is don't use parts that you didn't buy yourself or don't know exactly what they do, and get things checked out by a professional. So that's the takeaway from today's video. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll get back on track, hopefully building things rather than fixing them in the next episode.